Hey guys, how's it going? I hope everybody's doing really well out there today. In this video, we're going to take a look at a link shortening or URL shortening service hosted in Docker called Kutt. Now, we've taken a look at other URL shortening services in the past, like URLs and Schlink, and some others I am sure that have escaped my brain at the moment. But Kutt was brought to my attention yesterday in Discord by Dankster, so thanks to Dankster for bringing this to my attention. But we're going to take a look at their website real quick. We're going to take a look at my instance of Kutt, which is Kutt for whatever reason. So we're going to take a look at their website. We're going to take a look at my instance. We're going to talk about some stuff in there. Then we're going to take a look at their like their GitHub, their hub.docker.com, those sorts of things, and get this deployed in Docker. So you will need to put this on a URL for it to work. If it's just being hosted locally, I ran into some issues. So this does need to be hosted on a URL. So you'll want to get your favorite reverse proxy involved. But it's pretty straightforward to get this installed, and we will take a look at all of that. So with that said, let's jump over to kutt.it. This is their instance again, their logo, GitHub repository. We'll take a look at that later. Over here, they've got premium. Again, this is for their hosted version, as well as a login and a sign up. You can paste a URL in there, your full URL that you want to shorten. There are some advanced options that you can use, like the domain. You can have multiple domains work with this, which I think is kind of cool. The custom address is really like what you want the extension after the URL to be for the shortener. You can password protect your shortened URLs, which I super appreciate. Sometimes you want to create a URL that's only accessible to people who have the password. You want all of your URLs to be public. I love that this is a thing. You can also have it expire in a set number of minutes, hours, or days. Just by putting that in. And then you can give it a little description so you remember what that URL was if it's something obscure. Now below that, they've got some more information like manage links, set custom domains, and view stats. I believe that's what this image was intended to be. Unfortunately, it isn't loading, so I'm not sure what that is, but I'm guessing it has something to do with this. And again, a call out to log in or sign up on their hosted service. But again, we're going to deploy this in Docker on our own hardware. So let's scroll down a little further. Cutting edge features with cutting with a K there. So you can manage links, you can add custom domains. There's an API if you wanted to go that route, and free and open source as well. Appreciate all of that information. And then down here, it says browser extensions. Little UI UX thing needs to be updated there, so you can actually read that. But there's an extension for Chrome and an extension for Firefox, or we're led to believe that. Anyway, if I pop open this download for Chrome, it's there, 4.4 stars out of 24 ratings. But this extension may no longer be supported, or may soon no longer be supported because it doesn't follow best practices for Chrome extensions. So that's kind of disappointing. Also, if you jump over to the Firefox add-ons page, it just isn't there, and that's super unfortunate as well. This is actively being developed. We can see yesterday, 11 hours ago, 4 hours ago, 2 weeks ago, like days ago, weeks ago, months ago, whatever. It's all there, right? This is an active development kind of thing. So I hope that while they're working on this, they'll have somebody come in and make some changes to their website just to get everything loading appropriately. So that is kutt.it, kind of just to give you a general overview of what that looks like. But let's actually jump over to my instance over here at kutt.dbtech.tube. Not a super short URL, but again, this is just for the sake of testing. Again, basically the same stuff across the top, but instead of a login or sign up login thing, we've got logout, admin, and settings. We'll take a look at those in a little bit. But we're going to take a look at this where it says cut your links shorter. This dotted underline always gives me the idea that something there's going to be a little pop-up, a little fly out. Something's going to happen there, but they're just using it to accentuate shorter for their reasons. We can paste in our long URL. So let's do https youtube.com/dbtechyt, right? And then we can click the little paper airplane thing here, and it will, well, I'll just show you. We've done that, and over here it gives us kutt.dbtech.tube / a string of characters. M4WKKA was just a random characters that it generated, up to 6 in this case because of the way it's configured. But here we can see there are no views, and then there's more information here about stats, which of course there are none because I just did that. So let's pop this open in a new incognito window. And there we go. We can see it just in real time kick us over, which is great. If I refresh that, now we've got one view right there. If I click stats now, it is still in the process of updating, it looks like. However, if we take a look at the stats on something that I generated earlier, we can see, again, the URL up there that we've generated, how many views, how many tracked visits for the last day. We can also break that at my year, month, week, day. Again, we've got 1 tracked visits in the last day with a little line chart or whatever you want to call those. We've got a pie graph, we've got a bar chart. Again, more information about how those things happened. And then countries down here, because I'm in the US, that's where it happened. And then operating systems. So not a huge amount of information, but enough to give you an idea of where your links are being accessed from. And I actually super appreciate that. So let's come back over to here. Again, you can see some other stuff that I've done in there. So I tell you what, let's do this. I'm just going to grab this URL again. I'm going to delete the one that we just created, right? Super simple. You saw how easy that was. I'm going to paste it back in because I like to be original here when I do stuff. Instead of just clicking the paper airplane, this time I'm going to click show advanced settings. Here, if I had multiple domains set up, I could change that to be another domain if I had one set up. The custom address is, again, it's those 6 characters that it did by default. I might just shorten that even farther to be like YT. You can do password protection on here. We'll come back. No, I tell you what, we'll just do YT for that also. We, again, set our expires in 2 minutes, hours, days. That's what they've got as a kind of a, just an example that you could put in there. And then for the description, DB Tech YouTube, right? Easy enough. We'll click go. Oh, your password must be at least 3 characters. Awesome. We're just going to do this. Right, so that should work now. And then we'll click go. And now it has generated kutt.dbtech.tube/YT. We can see that right there. We can also see the little key, the little password protected indicator right there. I pop this open in a new incognito window. Hey, this link has been protected. Put in the password and click unlock and go. And there we go, just that easy. And now we've password protected that particular URL. And again, you can kind of see the description that we put in up here at the top. Again, we get all the same information, when it was created, what the URL is, the little copy icon, how many views, we refresh that. There's one. Our indicator, stats that we took a look at, there it is, just that quick and easy. We're showing that as well. There's this, which is a QR code, which I love. I don't want that up there. We can also edit this if we want, and we can remove the password. We can change any of this stuff as we need to, and then click either close or update, depending on whether or not we want to save our changes. And then, of course, like we saw earlier, there's a delete button if we want to get rid of that particular URL. So that's the general gist of how this works from a very basic standpoint. If we come up to the top, we can click on admin, and we can see recently shorted links. But from here, we can search for links, we can search for domains, users, things that were banned or not banned, whether they were anonymous or user. You can set up anonymous, you can allow for anonymous links to be posted, which is a terrible idea. But you can, and we'll take a look at that. We've also got domains with or without a domain, if you want to take a look at that. Again, more information and that sort of thing. So also over here, something new. That's not helpful. No alt or title tags. There's one there. There's one there. There's not one there. There's not one there. There's not one there. There's not one there. We need to be consistent with that. So again, these are little UI UX things that I spent so many years doing that it's all I focus on sometimes. So it would be nice to see the title tags, like this is password protected. This doesn't tell me what that does. So just little nitpicky things, I think. And then there are settings up here. Again, you can add additional domains. You can generate an API key. You can change your password, or you can delete your account. Again, I wouldn't do that if you're an admin, but if you give somebody else access to this and you need to delete their account, you can do that through the admin and settings areas. So that's kind of the general overall gist. It just works. It's super easy to use. I'm a big fan of all of that. Now I want to take a look at their GitHub repository. and their hub.docker.com page, and kind of, unfortunately, I got to pick it apart just a little bit. Whether we're on their page or our self-hosted page, both of them have a link to their GitHub repository. And it is this one right here. And again, we looked at this briefly a moment ago where we can see, things have been in active development for a long time. They just released a new version 4 hours ago, right? A new release came out 4 hours ago. So love that. Love that it's actively being worked on. But there's some issues. So you can see here that there are 4 different Docker Compose files, and that's great. I love seeing that they're taking different people into consideration here, whether they want to use a Postgres database or a Maria database or a SQLite or whatever is going on. With this one, just has, looks like it's going to have a SQLite database built into that as well. And they all look basically the same. There are a few little things here and there, like let's take a look at the SQLite Redis version of this. And here we can see that it's got services, which is how these files start. Our first service is server, and then it's got a build and a context. So when we see this server build, or basically this build and context with the dot, that means we have to clone the Docker repository effectively to get this Docker file right here. Without the Docker file, it can't build anything like it wants us to do in this first command right here. So that's interesting to me, right? But we'll come back to why, if I remember, we should remember. Anyway, below that, we've got some volumes. We've got a volume for the SQLite database. We've got a volume for custom, and I believe that has to do with the theming that's available with this. We're not going to get into theming with this. And then below that, we've got some environment variables like the database file name, Redis enabled true or false, Redis host, Redis port. All of that is there, and that's great. We've also got ports down here, runs on port 3000 by default. No issues with that. Depends on Redis condition service started. Totally makes sense. This won't spin up and do its thing. It won't start the server application until the Redis database is up and running. And then below that, we've got a Redis service with the image of Redis Alpine, restart policy of always, and some volumes down here for the database SQLite, as well as the custom down there. So, okay, so let's talk about this for a minute. And I believe this to be true on all of these. That was the Redis. We'll take a look at the Postgres. Yep. Okay, so again, same basic idea. This is the Postgres version of this. Again, services, server, build, context. Again, we've got some environment variables for the database client, the database host, the port, the Redis stuff. The ports depends on Postgres condition being healthy and Redis condition being started. And then we get into like the Postgres stuff with the image, the restart policy, user, volumes, environment variables. We're exposing port 5432. We've got a health check in here. We've got Redis. So, and then this restart policy of always on the Redis as well. So here's the thing, right? Here's the thing that I've noticed consistently. In fact, I noticed something while I was talking here. Our server build, our Kutt server that we took a look at here, right? There's no restart policy on their server container. There's nothing in here that says, like restart always or restart unless stopped, or everything else in their stack or their Docker Compose has a restart policy except for their server. So I think they need to address that. But then we've got environment variables up here for the database client and the host and the port and the Redis, all of that for the server. When we get down here to Postgres, there are environment variables for the database and the password. When we get into Redis, I guess there aren't any for that. So it is what it is there. But they've got all these environment variables in here, but they've also got this example.env file. So they've got all of their environment variables here, but also in their Docker Compose. So that's a little weird to me to have it in both places and have them conflict with each other, except that nowhere in any of these Docker Compose files do they actually reference a .env file. So there's this weird, do they want you to use the .env file, or do they want you to put the environment variables in the Docker Compose? There seems to be a discrepancy there. But something else that I noticed, if we look at the .env file, well, it's an .example.env file. We've got things in here like site name, default domain, JWT secret. Then you can choose what kind of database you want to use and fill in the information for all of that. You can set the link length, that's weird to say, I kept referencing 6 characters earlier, right? When it generates a URL for itself. It's because it gave us 6 characters because that's what's defined in the in the .env file. We can have link custom alphabet, so we can decide which letters we want to use, which letters we don't want to use. Here it says the default value omits O, O, 0, I, 1, L, and J to avoid confusion in the URL, which I super appreciate for security reasons. I appreciate them being forward thinking on that. We've also got a trust proxy equals true. Again, this tells the app that it's running behind a reverse proxy. This is optional. You don't have to have it, but it's there. We've also got Redis enabled true or false with the Redis host, the port, the password. See, we had port or host and port in the Docker Composes that we looked at earlier. Why is it also here? I'm confused by that. Redis database equals 0. If you don't know what it is, you probably don't need to change it. Disallow registration, you can set this to true or false. If you want to allow registration, you set this to false. If you want to allow anonymous links, you set this to false. Server only, or server IP address, server CNAME, it's only for display purposes and has no other use. Then don't include it, I guess would be my thing. Custom domain uses HTTPS, true or false. We've got some SMTP stuff down here. We can enable rate limits for API usage. We can allow, or we can put in an email address for report email and contact email. So there's a bunch of stuff in here that isn't in the Docker Compose files, but there's no reference to this in the Docker Compose files because a lot of the environment variables that are here are also in the Docker Compose files. Why? I don't understand. I'm confused by that. Maybe this is a me issue. I'm willing to accept that. But if you just go and let's say you clone this repository and you deploy this SQLite Redis.yaml file here, because it doesn't reference the .env file, it just sets your default URL to localhost on port 3000. It doesn't include the JWT secret that it requires to deploy. Like there are several issues with the way this is currently set up. So what I've done is I have created my own Docker Compose using this. Now, this looks considerably different than what we saw a moment ago because it turns out, like if we take a look here, we've got services server. Instead of building something, we're just using the latest version of that image because if you go over to hub.docker.com, there's got pre-built images here. So I don't know why they haven't updated it over there on the GitHub repository because if you go over to their hub.docker.com, there's not a lot of information about how this works. Maybe, yep, see that, there's nothing there because I think they copied and pasted this from their GitHub repository and the links didn't adjust. So none of these Docker Compose files are available on their GitHub or on their hub.docker.com. But if we go over to here, there they are. But again, they don't reference the pre-built images over on hub.docker.com. Do you see why I'm a little frustrated with this particular container and the services there that's being built with this Docker Compose? It's because it's like they got, like on the Docker Compose, they got right up to the line and we're just like, that's good enough. And then they built their hub.docker.com page with pre-built images and they got right up to the line and they're like, nah, that's good enough. So what I've done is I've built my own Docker Compose for the basic SQLite instance. I rebuilt, let's actually come over to here, not this one. This Docker Compose.SQLite-redis.yml file. I took this and I rebuilt it so that it uses pre-built images from hub.docker.com. I will have this linked in the video description if you want to go that route. But basically our services, our server, our image rather than the built command. Our volumes are all the same. Our file name, which is fine. I didn't change this because it's a SQLite thing. I don't want to mess it up, so I didn't mess with it. Redis enabled true. Redis host Redis. Redis port 6379. It's down there under the expose. The JWT secret. This wasn't part of this Docker Compose, but it wouldn't deploy without it. So I added JWT secret : space, and then I used my password generator to generate just a long string of characters. A default domain, I had to put that in there because without it, it referred everything to localhost on port 3000 rather than cut.abtech.tube. Again, I left the ports the same, but if you were already using port 3000, you would just change, that first half of that line. Don't change the colon or anything after it. Again, depends on Redis condition service started, and then Redis is down here, and then we've got a couple of volumes at the bottom. So this Docker Compose, for the sake of making things easier for you guys, will be linked in the video description. But if you want to deploy one of the other versions, whether it's the MariaDB, the Postgres, just the simple Docker Compose, you will need to refer to the information lower on this screen with regards to the different environment variables. In fact, it even says here all variables are optional except the JWT secret, which is required on production. Cool, then include it. Again, I had to add it to the Docker Compose that I used when I deployed this in Shortener that I rebuilt, because it wasn't in any of the Docker Compose files that were up here, and none of these Docker Compose files reference the env file where the JWT secret is referenced. So anyway, I'm ranting. But anyway, you will want to refer to the environment variables that are in this table down here, again, at least at the time of recording, in order to get this to work. There are a bunch of them. Everything, again, from the JWT secret to port, site name, default domain, link length, link custom alphabet. We looked at all of these, but there's also stuff down here for, again, more Redis stuff, server IP address and CNAME, which is, I don't know why it's there. Custom domain, enable rate limit for the API, email stuff for mail servers and reporting and contact emails as well. And then themes and customizations. You can place your content inside the custom folder, folding or according to the instructions below. There you can see what all of that looks like. Again, the theming is outside the scope of what I want to cover in this video. Again, I think this is a very cool project. They need to tighten up their documentation and their Docker Compose files in their GitHub repository. You can clone the GitHub repository and deploy it that way if you want to. However, updates kind of become a nightmare in that case because you're not referencing an actual pre-built Docker file. You got to reclone the Docker or the whole Docker repository to get the new Docker file. I mean, I know that there are ways you can just get that one file, but you understand what I'm saying here. Or you can just use the pre-built file with whatever tag you want to use, whether it's latest or or you actually want to pin a version. Completely up to you. I just wanted to cover this real quick because I think it's a cool project, and I hope. Oh, one other thing before I wrap this up, I understand that theming is absolutely a thing, but at least give us like a light mode, dark mode toggle, so we don't have to get into theming to do light mode and dark mode. I feel like those are the very, very basics for building an application, is having light mode and dark mode. Again, super appreciate that I can build my own custom theme. Would just like to have a toggle up here somewhere to let me toggle light mode and dark mode. But anyway, that out of the way, I think Kutt is a very cool project. I love the aesthetic of it. I love how simple it is to use once it's deployed. I think all of that is great. I just have a bit of an issue with they can't make up their mind. Do they want to use the env file, or they do not want to use the env file? I think they need to have a session to just kind of clean some stuff up. They could probably knock it out in an afternoon or less. I would just really, really love to see that. But again, if you want to deploy Kutt, I will have my version of the Docker Compose linked in the video description, so you can check that out. Again, if you want to take a look at the other Docker Compose options, you can kind of combine what they've done and what I've got and figure out how to merge those into something that works for you. But yeah, I just wanted to cover this real quick. Also, I wanted to take a look. Currently, they've got 8.8 thousand stars. If you want to go give them a star, that would be amazing. If you want to give this video a like and a subscribe, that would also be amazing. Again, links to everything in the video description, including ways you can support the channel besides a like and subscribe, including links to Discord, Patreon, becoming a channel member, all of that kind of stuff down there as well. But with all of that out of the way, I'm going to wrap this up. Again, I want to thank you guys for spending a few minutes of your day with me here today, and I'll talk to you in the next video.